Hello, welcome back. We meet again. Now, so last time we have talked about the various adaptations of respiratory structures and surfaces, as in humans, insects, frogs, fish. And then today, let's continue with the breathing mechanism. Now, so if you can recall, we have been talking about why we breathe. Okay, and then why we need alveoli for gaseous exchange, why the thorax and the abdomen can move up and down during the breathing process. And then we also have looked at the adaptations of the respiratory surfaces, and these are the four common characteristics or the adaptations of respiratory surfaces. So today let's look at how we breathe. Now, so to talk about it, now let's move to this part again, the breathing mechanism in fish, frogs, and humans. Now let's start with what we are familiar with first. Now, so this is a thorax cavity. It is the space where we house our rib cage and the lungs. And this is a model that represents the thorax. Now this is the thorax, and the cavity, the space inside is known as the thorax cavity, and we have the lungs. So the balloons represent the lungs. So how do we breathe? We don't actually breathe with nose or with mouth. We actually breathe with the contraction of muscles, certain muscles such as the diaphragm muscles and the intercostal muscle. Now, so how do we breathe? Basically, we need to create a difference in the external air pressure and the internal air pressure so that the air is either forced in or forced out. Now, so let's look at inhalation. Now, to inhale, first of all, the diaphragm has to contract and flatten. So when the diaphragm contracts, it flattens. And then at the same time, the external intercostal muscle contract and the internal intercostal muscle relax. Now, so this will cause the rib cage to move upward and outwards. Now, this will increase the volume of the thoracic cavity, causing the air pressure in the thoracic cavity to decrease. So right now, as we can see in this diagram, so the volume of the thoracic cavity has increased, the pressure of the thoracic cavity decreases, and as a result this time, the atmospheric pressure is now greater than the internal thoracic pressure. So as a result, air is forced by the atmospheric pressure into the lungs, expanding the lungs. Alright, so this is how we breathe. Then how do we breathe out? We don't breathe out using nose or mouth. Now similarly, we breathe out using diaphragms as well, diaphragms and the intercostal muscle. So this time, in order to breathe out, we need to make sure that the internal air pressure is greater than the atmospheric pressure. So how do we do that? Number one, the diaphragm relaxes. When it relaxes, it becomes dome shape. So this will press on the space, the thoracic cavity, causing the volume of the thoracic to decrease, and as a result, the air pressure in the pressure in the thoracic cavity increases. At the same time, the external intercostal muscles relax, the internal intercostal muscle contract, causing the rib cage to move downwards and inwards. So this will cause the pressure in the thoracic cavity to be greater than the pressure in the atmosphere, causing the air to be forced out of lungs. And this time, the lungs deflate, or we say the lungs constrict, now as shown in this diagram. Alright, so when we move the diaphragm up, the volume here decreases, pressure increases, pressure is greater than the atmospheric pressure. So air from the lungs is forced out, causing the lungs to deflate. Alright, now so in this diagram, this is a side view of the lungs and the intercostal muscles, as well as the vertebral column. Now vertebral column is also known as the backbone. Alright, so vertebral column basically doesn't move. So what moves up and down, inwards and outwards, is actually the rib cage, with the sternum. The sternum is here, it is the breastbone. So the rib bones actually connect the vertebral column or the backbone to the sternum. Alright. Now, so when the diaphragm relaxes, so it arches up, causing the volume here to be decreased, and as a result the pressure here is greater than the external atmospheric pressure. So as a result, air is forced out. So this time the rib cage will then move downwards and inwards. Alright, now so this is about the breathing mechanisms in humans. Now what about fish? Now so let this one be the head of the fish, okay, and this part certainly must be the operculum because the operculum protects the gills. As we can recall, a bony fish has 4 pairs of gills, okay, 4 on each side. Now so when it breathes in, okay, when it inhales in the water, basically number 1, the mouth has to open, and then the floor of the buccal cavity. Now what is buccal cavity? Buccal cavity is known as the mouth cavity. So the floor of the buccal cavity is lowered, causing the volume in the buccal cavity to increase, and as a result the water pressure here will be lower than the external water pressure. So water is forced into the buccal cavity. Alright, now so if we look at it, okay, now from another perspective, okay, now this is it. Now so during the inhalation process, now look at it. Now this is the buccal cavity. Inside the buccal cavity, now it's just an empty space, okay, with water, and then to the posterior of the buccal cavity, actually we have an opercular cavity here. Now this opercular cavity houses the gills. Now so during inhalation, first of all, the floor, now this is a floor, the floor of the buccal cavity is lowered, causing the volume of the buccal cavity to increase. As a result, pressure decreases. So this time the water pressure in the buccal cavity is lower than the external water pressure. So water is actually forced in to the buccal cavity. Then what about exhalation? Now it doesn't exhale, okay, through the mouth because it breathes using the gills, okay. We need to allow the water to go through, to go over the gills, so that gaseous exchange occurs there. Now so this time the mouth closes, the floor of the buccal cavity is raised up, pressing on the cavity, reducing the volume of the buccal cavity, increasing the water pressure in the buccal cavity. So this time the pressure of the buccal cavity is greater than pressure in the surrounding water. So water will be forced out through the operculum. So when water flows over the gills, gaseous exchange occurs, okay. Oxygen diffuses into the blood capillaries, and then CO2 diffuses out. So let's look at it from the top view. Alright, so during exhalation, the mouth closes, the floor of the buccal cavity raises, volume decreases, pressure increases, pressure is greater than the external water pressure. So this time water is forced out through the operculum. As you can see here, the operculum opens to allow the water to go out. Alright, so it's rather simple, right? So we know to breathe in and out, basically we need to create a difference in pressure, okay, between the external and the internal pressure. Now let's look at the third one, okay, which is the respiration, the inhalation and the exhalation of frogs. Now honestly speaking, now I would say that breathing in frogs is actually very troublesome, okay. Now I'm going to show you, okay, because breathing itself is divided into 2 phases, the inhalation and the exhalation. Inhalation is further divided into 2 phases. First of all, the air has to move to the buccal cavity first, then the air moves into the lungs. During the exhalation process, first the air has to move into the buccal cavity first, then the air is forced out. No, so it's rather troublesome, okay. Now let's look at it. Now this is a frog. Now it breathes, okay, the air actually goes into the buccal cavity through the nostrils opening. So first of all, the nostrils open. The glottis. Now what is a glottis? Glottis is just a muscle that controls the opening into the lungs. Alright. Now so of course during eating, glottis closes as well, to allow the food to go through the esophagus. But during the breathing process, the glottis has to open to allow the air to go in or out of lungs. So let's start again. Number 1, nostrils open, glottis closes, the floor of the buccal cavity is lowered. So this will increase the volume of the buccal cavity, decreasing the pressure of the buccal cavity. So because the atmospheric pressure is right now greater than the air pressure in the buccal cavity, so right now air is forced into the buccal cavity, but air hasn't moved into the lungs first. Now, so the next phase will be nostril closed, glottis opens, floor of the buccal cavity is raised, volume decreases, pressure increases here. The air pressure in the buccal cavity is right now greater than the air pressure in the lungs. So as a result, air is forced into the lungs and lungs expand. As you can recall in the previous lesson, we say that the lungs of frogs is actually very special because they do not have alveoli. They do have partitions to increase the total surface area for gaseous exchange. Alright, now how to breathe out? The floor of the buccal cavity has to be lowered. So this time nostrils still closed, glottis opens. The lowering of the floor of the buccal cavity causes the volume here to increase, pressure here to decrease. As a result, air is forced out into the buccal cavity. Now next part, okay, which is the last step. Glottis closes, nostrils open, and then the floor of the buccal cavity right now is raised up. Since the air has nowhere to go, the air can't move in because the glottis closes, so the air is forced out into the atmosphere. Alright, now let's go back to the 4 phases. So basically, we have just learned about the breathing mechanism in humans, for example, and in fish. Now we know in order to breathe, we need to create a difference in the volume and thus pressure. So as long as there is a difference in the pressure, then air will move. Okay, from a region with high pressure to a region with low pressure. Okay, now last phase. Now what if we have a puncture at the lungs? Will we be able to breathe? Now as you can see here, in this diagram, now this is pneumothorax. Is when the air builds up between the outside of your lungs, of our lung, and the inside of our chest wall, which is the rib cage. So there, the air can come from your lungs or from outside the body if there is a serious injury to the chest. So let's say if we have a bullet, someone shot at us, and our lung, one of the lungs just get punctured. So basically, we can no longer expand or deflate the lungs because we couldn't when there is a hole here. So basically, the air pressure in the thoracic cavity, or the pressure in the thoracic cavity, will be equivalent to the atmospheric pressure. So since we can't manipulate so that there is actually a difference in the air pressure, so we can't breathe. Alright. Now, so make sure we look at the learning outcomes again. Make sure that you have mastered all these learning outcomes. All those will be tested in the examination. Alright, so last part, as a homework today, please compare, make a table to compare and contrast the human respiratory system, with that of fish, for example, with that of frogs. Alright, so I shall see you again